Honorable Vice President Biden, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to address such a distinguished audience. And with their outstanding dedication to enhance the ties between the US and Turkey, I would like to congratulate American-Turkish Council and also Turkish-American Business Council and Foreign Economic Relations Board for their relentless effort. My thanks especially goes to Ambassador Holmes, Ambassador Armitage, and also Haluk Dinçer for preparing this very successful 2 days of events. Please allow me to start my remarks by touching upon our bilateral relations between Turkey and the United States. We are two countries which are friends, partners, and allies. President Obama defines our relations as a model partnership. With respect and embrace to the very same values and ideals, Turkey and the United States promote democracy, freedoms, human rights, rule of law, market economy. And we promote all these around the world. We have a long list of common foreign policy agenda. When I first met with Secretary Clinton in my former capacity as Minister of Foreign Affairs, I asked her to list her top 10 foreign policy issues. And I told her I'm going to list mine. And I bet when we compare the lists, at least 9 out of 10 of those issues are probably identical. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, the nuclear program of Iran, Middle East peace process, transition countries in the Middle East and North Africa, the evolving balances in the Asia-Pacific region, relations with Russia, relations with China, the global economic crisis, the fight against terrorism, energy supply security. I could make this list much longer. Not only that we have such a comprehensive, common set of agenda items, but as Vice President Biden just told, we actually target the very same outcome in most of the cases. Sometimes our paths of reaching the very same target is different, but on the other hand, we do have a very close consultation and cooperation on many of these subjects. Another common theme which brings us together, both countries have a sense of global responsibility. When President Obama started his first term, the very first overseas trip that he made was actually to Turkey. And since then, many meetings took place at very high levels between our two countries. And the last one being my Prime Minister Erdogan's visit to Washington, D.C., a very successful and comprehensive visit. As Turkey, our foreign policy principles are quite clear. We always promote peace, stability, security. We always target prosperity. We use diplomacy, mediation, as the preferred way of solving problems. We put human being at the center, at the core of our policy areas. Between Turkey and the United States, the traditional cooperation areas are mostly in the political, military, or security spheres. The economic and commercial aspect of our relations has been somewhat lagging. But recently, we have stepped up our efforts in those areas as well. We founded the Framework for Strategic Economy and Commercial Cooperation. And during my Prime Minister's visit, both countries decided to work together on how we can walk towards a possible free trade agreement. The US and the EU are now starting to talk for transatlantic trade and investment promotion, TTIP. And we would very much like to start a parallel process as a country which is already in the customs union with the European Union. Our trade volume has already exceeded $20 billion between our two countries. But of course, there's a huge untapped potential for both trade and investments. Our close cooperation on major energy projects is also worth mentioning. To give just a glimpse of how fast our relations are catching up, there are now non-stop flights 3 times a day between Istanbul and New York, daily flights between Istanbul and Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, now 4 times a week, but it will increase the frequency soon. And we have already decided to add flights, Istanbul-Boston, Istanbul-San Francisco, Istanbul-Miami, Istanbul-Atlanta. Just the list of these cities show how more and more integrated our economies will become. We have a very close cooperation within G20, within IMF and World Bank governance, within OECD. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Turkey has been going through a very important transformation process over the last 10 years. This was a political transformation, this was a social transformation, this was also an economic transformation. Our political transformation was demonstrated in a better functioning democratic system compared to 10 years ago, better practices for freedoms, human rights being better respected, and rule of law being better and better implemented in the country. We have done a lot, but on the other hand, we know that there is a lot remaining to be done. So we still have a long to-do list when we talk about the political transformation process in Turkey. People always talk about stability and security on one hand, and democracy and freedoms on the other. And there's a rhetoric about striking the right balance. There's a rhetoric about trade-offs. But we are actually targeting both, to strengthen ourselves on both areas. We want to demonstrate more and more that stability and security can be enhanced in a parallel way of better and better practices of freedoms and a much better functioning democratic system in the country. We never believed on those trade-offs or balances. We are targeting both. We know that we should not just compromise security, just giving freedoms as a reason. At the same time, we should not restrict freedoms using security as an excuse. Democracy and freedoms actually do strengthen the stability in a sustainable way in the long term. We are very much aware of this. And it should not be forgotten that this transformation process of Turkey has also become a source of inspiration for many countries in our region. On one hand, we are trying to transform ourselves, but on the other, what's happening in Turkey is influencing a very large geography. We are also learning from our experiences. We are also learning from our mistakes. But on the other hand, we should be very careful when we evaluate the ongoing events in Turkey. The right for nonviolent demonstration is a universal human right, and there is no question about it. But on the other hand, if there is violence, then it is the duty of the state to take necessary measures so that innocent people, innocent citizens will not be also harmed. On the other hand, we do know that we have to spend more effort to understand the concerns, to understand the motivation behind why civilians, innocent people with good will are actually trying to express themselves. But there is a need for strict distinction between the terrorist groups or illegal organizations versus citizens who are just purely protesting on non-violent basis. It's a difficult balance. But we are working hard, and my Prime Minister will actually demonstrate that Turkey is on the right path. Turkey is going towards a non-reversible process of a target which has first-class democracy as the ultimate target and the world-class practices of freedoms and human rights in our country. This is what we truly believe in, and that's what will make Turkey a strong country, a stable country with security also provided. The transition in Turkey, the transformation of Turkey has also become a social one. Right now we have more than 400 television channels in Turkey. These are broadcasting nationwide, regionally or locally. 1,100 radio channels. Turkey is now number 6 in the world using Facebook when you look at the people who are subscribed to the system. A very vibrant young population. This transformation is also an economic transformation. Before the 2008-2009 crisis, we were able to bring down our budget deficit, bring down our public debt as a percentage of our GDP. We completed our social security reform, our healthcare reform, and public financial management control reform. In 2009, at the peak of the crisis, we continued with fiscal discipline. We announced a 3-year medium-term program by which we continued to reduce our debt-to-GDP ratio, but meanwhile have strong growth rates. We continued our structural reforms with a new commercial code, a new code of obligations, a new capital markets law. Private sector has been the main driver of growth in our economic model. We believe that the government's role is to provide stability in the country, to have a confident business environment, lift the barriers, lift the red tape, do the privatizations, and do the actual job what the government should do, which is about smart regulation, which is about supervision, targeting equal opportunity, targeting a well-functioning competitive system, protecting consumer rights, preserving the environment, concentrating on education, healthcare, a good justice system, also providing a good security system for our people. And the results. The last 3 years, our growth rate was 6.7% on average. Meanwhile, debt to GDP ratio decreased from 46% to 36% of GDP. There is now a big discussion in the world about whether countries should target austerity or growth. We are doing both. We are growing with austerity. 4.8 million additional jobs have been created since the 2009 crisis. Last 1 year, 49% of the new incomers to our job market were women. Our poverty indicators improved dramatically. We don't have any population right now with an income of $1 per person per day or less. Even the $2 threshold of UN World Bank, we zeroed that population. When you look at the $4.3 per person per day threshold, the percentage of our population decreased from 30% to 2.7%. Income distribution is continuously improving in the country. Across the OECD, Turkey is the country which is improving its income distribution at the fastest rate. That is what OECD reported a year ago. And our targets for year 2023. Like we increased our per capita GDP from $3,500 to $10,500, which corresponds to $17,000 of PPP adjusted per capita income. This is already half of Japan, by the way. Our target for year 2023 is $25,000. We increased our exports from $36 billion to $153 billion over the last 10 years. Next 10 years, we are targeting $500 billion of exports. We are targeting to make Istanbul one of the top 10 international financial centers globally. We are taking firm steps to reach that target. On the other hand, we do know that we need more reforms to increase our saving rates, to decrease our energy import dependency, to increase our renewable energy sources and also domestic energy sources. We know that we should do more reforms to increase our competitiveness through more R&D, through innovation, through brand building, moving to a higher technology production, moving to higher value-added production, doing more reforms in our labor market, and most important of all, doing our reforms in education and judicial system. Two areas which we need to move fast, which will support our economic growth eventually. Turkey is now an emerging donor nation. Across the OECD, we are the country which is increasing its overseas aid at the fastest rate. Most of this development aid goes to education, healthcare, and technical training. More than 100 countries so far we have provided aid. To transition countries in Middle East and North Africa, so far we have provided a financing of $2.8 billion, $1.4 billion already dispersed, and we are also providing technical training. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, as my final remarks, let me briefly touch upon a few of the regional issues that we are faced with. The situation in Syria is critical. More than 100,000 civilians, women, children, have already lost their lives. Assad regime's legitimacy has been absolutely lost. Prolongation of the conflict is detrimental for Syria, for the Syrian people, and for the region. A prolonged civil war may lead to regional tension, instability of Jordan, and disintegration of Lebanon. A mass refugee movement is another grave concern that binds to humanitarian tragedy on our borders. We will continue to support the Syrian people in their rightful struggle for dignity. We have adopted an open-door policy for the desperate people fleeing the brutality in their country. Despite immense security implications and massive financial burden, we continue this policy. With more than 3 million internally displaced persons and hundreds of thousands seeking refuge in neighboring countries, the struggle in Syria has long gained catastrophic proportions. This cannot continue. We must maintain our determination to wind down this crisis. For Iraq, we are firmly committed to the territorial integrity and political unity of the country. Turkey has always made the necessary calls for moderation and cooperation to all parties in the country. We are trying to prevent a sectarian or an ethnic clash in Iraq. The controversy regarding Iran's nuclear program is another source of concern. The issue must be resolved through diplomatic means. We don't want to see nuclear weapons in our region, and we are working closely with P5+1 and Iran to sustain the diplomatic track and facilitate solution. We appreciate the renewed engagement by the US administration in the Middle East peace process. Any escalation must be prevented. The ceasefire must be respected. Steps should be taken to further easing the restrictions on Gaza. Reconciliation within the Palestinian side is essential for the peace process. The transition processes in Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, and Yemen need a lot of external support and guidance. Economic reforms must accompany political reforms for a true successful outcome. Mr. Vice President, distinguished guests, at the outset of my remarks, I made a reference to democracy as one of the ties that binds us. Developments in our region show us that people's aspiration for freedom and dignity is not restricted to certain parts of the world. A real functioning democracy is what everybody truly desires. These are at the core of what makes us as the transatlantic community, and it will continue to stay so. Thank you.
Deputy Prime Minister Babacan, thank you so much for those good words and for your customary courtesies, and particularly for the special effort that we know that you made to be with us and to be with Vice President Biden this evening. Now, I wonder if you would be kind enough to rise, and I will ask our two chairmen, Haluk Dinçer from TAIC and Ambassador Armitage, to present a recognition of your services here. Could In recognition of a distinguished career in Turkish politics and his dedication as a servant of the Turkish people, as Minister of Finance, Chief EU Negotiator, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Deputy Prime Minister for the Economy. For his outstanding leadership of the Turkish economy, making it globally respected and acclaimed as the Turkish miracle, and for his continued belief in and support of the U.S.-Turkey relationship, we are proud to present the Distinguished Leadership Award to the Honorable Ali Babacan. And Mr. Vice President, in recognition of a distinguished career of dedicated public service spanning more than 4 decades in the United States Congress and as Vice President, where he led and shaped American foreign policy, for his unswerving fight against international terrorism, and for building strong and durable relationships in the international community, including the ever-critical U.S.-Turkey relationship, the Distinguished Citizen Award is presented to the Honorable Joseph R. Biden, Vice President of the United States. Thank you all. Thank you, Vice President Biden. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Ali Babacan. Now, if you would please remain in your places while the Vice President and the Deputy Prime Minister depart. Thank you. Give them a round of applause, please. Okay. Meal service will begin. Afiyet olsun.